welcome to the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV, where we discuss several matters, current affairs are going on that impact us as a citizenry of Uganda, but also our continent and the world at large. Today, we are discussing several developments, one of them being the sitting of the Buganda caucus yesterday that raised an awareness or raised a point regarding the what they assume would be an imminent migration of Balaalo or following evictions from northern Uganda, and putting the communities of Buganda alert at that question. What's our take on this sensitive discussion that we have been having time and again on this show, given these recent developments? We shall be hearing, of course, from our very capable panelists to break down some of those issues and what we should look out for. Are they correct with this stand? So these are some of the questions regarding that topic, new developments, of course. We shall also be looking at the ICJ ruling on the South Africa case that was brought against Israel. Officially, Israel is on trial for genocide. However, that trial does take time. It is estimated that it will take 2 or 3 years. But there were preliminary rulings placing an imperative on Israel to take care regarding civilian lives in Gaza, but also enable humanitarian flow within. So we shall be discussing. And of course, the interesting twist, that was our very Justice 17 that sits on the court ruling the way she did, and getting Ugandans on the other end of the African attack. We shall be discussing that and probably what motivated her. And of course, we recently saw the deliberations in Parliament regarding the budget, 52 trillion shillings this time round. If it goes through into implementation, it shall mean we shall have 14 trillion less than last year's budget. So many sectoral, or should I say programmatic, areas to discuss within that, issues of governance, issues of allocation to human capital development, among others, which again, my very capable panelists will be helping to break down. And just to welcome them today, you're most welcome, my dear panelists.
Thank you.
Once again, to introduce you, we have Major Awich, Pollar, Director External Affairs at the National Resistance Movement. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you, viewers, and always nice to be with these two nice persons.
Yes.
And of course, he's retired major, but not yet retired. Just
yes. You once held a similar one in a billion position like Justice 17. So it would be interesting to hear your...
17 actually got elected on a precedent of my brochure. The brochure I used for my election in New York, when she went there as a candidate, the embassy gave him my copy, gave her my copy to prepare a similar thing for election, because she was voted the way I was voted.
Wow.
Rigged.
We shall be... No. We have Mr. Ochieno Joseph, of course, from the Uganda People's Congress, but also a media personality. You're most welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with retired, but not so tired.
Not tired at all. not so tired, but not tired
that
at all.
That has been emphasized.
Yes.
And of course, my fantastic, beautiful friend, Sarah Bireete. Always a pleasure to be here. Of course, yes, it's now nearly a week.
Yes.
And of course, while we were away, I found myself with a very energetic comrade Awich at Alito to send off our fantastic nationalist lady, Cecilia Gual, may her soul rest in eternal peace. Cecilia was one of my early leaders with military Boti in the 90s, and we did some fantastic work over 5 years. And it was exciting to see that, Sarah, that as we were doing the send-off, which you were there, some of the things that were going in my mind. So for you young guys, it's important that whatever you do it well. because you know no tomorrow. The loneliness of Cecilia at the time, the loneliness of our campaigns then, and here we find ourselves with all the glitter and all the relations and glory being granted to this woman, now a national hero. It's amazing. So that, her credit, that to her credit of her family, but that's really to the credit of the struggles that some people now really take for granted. But I think the biggest lesson is that young Ugandans should know that the best is in the best that you do, and the best is actually in the foundation and not in the rush that you do, but that you do it excellent work. Yeah. And Cecilia is a manifestation of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shen, and I know the young Ugandans will be listening keenly and also following the good example of the late. You're most welcome today.
Thanks for having us.
And of course, we have Dr. Bireete Sarah, who is the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. You're most welcome.
Thank you, and good afternoon, viewers.
Starting with you, Dr. Bireete. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, we saw the sitting of the Buganda caucus in Parliament, led by Honorable Mohamed Mwanga Chivumbi, putting the citizenry on alert once again regarding the topic of the Balaalo. I mean, we could be mistaken for repeating it here, but stating
there are new developments.
Yes, stating that there should be, I think there's a program called Echoto, and part of it is that they need to be alert regarding the reoccupation or the occupation of the Buganda cattle corridor by the evicted or to be evicted Balaalo from northern Uganda. What's your take on this statement? How do we digest it as a nation that is trying to come together in the face of nation building?
Well, coming from a background of the Balaalo crisis in Acholi,
yes,
we discussed here on 2 occasions the Balaalo presence in Acholi land that are now being evicted. I think a good portion of them has been evicted. The exercise is not yet complete in Acholi, but I think it's about 60%, at least 60% complete on that eviction of the categories of Balaalo.
These are the ones that didn't have fences.
That were agreed upon, those that had not bought land, or those that didn't have fences, those where there were complaints. I think a big portion of them have now been evicted, and partly the crisis in that part of the country of this Balaalo is phasing out. I want to mention the characteristics of cattle keepers because I happen to come from a region dominant with cattle keeping. I've never seen a person owning more than 3 cows without owning land. Any cattle keeper, the first he should own is land. Either own or lease a big chunk of land. Then you go into owning cattle. It's not the other way around. If you find a family with 1 or 2 cows, these are the ones who rear these cows while tied in a place and can casually trespass on other people's land. So the fact that we have people owning hundreds of thousands of heads of cattle without land is problematic, is unlike the characteristics of cattle keepers, and should worry everyone. Because why would you own so much cattle without land? And how do you even expand your farm to that magnitude without land? Or with an intention of encroaching on people's land permanently?
But are in these pastoral groups that...
No, I'm coming, but I come from that region. I'm telling you what farming we do in Western Uganda. So I know that under those traditional primitive methods, people would move in search of pasture and water only during the dry season, meaning that the pasture and water on your farm has dried out. Then you can temporarily move with your cattle. But we have permanent people moving with big herds of cattle. This is unlike Uganda. It's unlike Uganda. It's unlike Ugandan. And if these people are foreigners, then we need to identify who they are. How do they cross into Uganda? How come their characteristics are different from the characteristics known of cattle keepers? whether nomadic or not. Because even the nomads own land. They only move in dry seasons. So having said that, these people who were evicted in Acholi land, apparently according to the MPs and the media reports, are now in Buganda. What does this mean for possible tribal tensions in Buganda, for an escalation of land grabbing in Uganda, for the a fight for resources, and resources here, I mean land, because everybody from all parts of Uganda is here in Kampala. And now you add in the Balaalo influx. 80% of land grabbing cases are in Uganda region. For obvious reasons, it's a capital city. Everybody wants proximity with the capital city. So now when you add in the mix of these nomads, whom we need to establish whether they're Ugandans or not, because their characteristics are strange. On top of the strange characteristics I've defined, some of them are armed. So that's what even complicates the situation of Balaalo. Are these common primitive nomads moving around, uneducated, uncivilized? And if so, then how do they acquire arms?
So desperate?
How do they acquire arms? So they have been reported to be encroaching on Kayunga Forest Reserve, according to media reports. But also the Uganda Parliamentary Caucus, they were putting their people on alert to guard their land on that fireplace. A fireplace means you don't sleep. Gather and be on a watch. So they are now on community watch for their land. We have a crisis of land grabbing in Uganda. We have emerging tribal tensions in Uganda because of sectarian and nepotism in our politics. At least going by the report by the Equal Opportunities Commission. At least now we have documentation of the nepotism and sectarianism. Before it used to sound like hearsay, but it is now documented by a government department. So you have these tensions. You going by the spark after the tour of the National Unity Platform principle, Bob Wine, and the speech in Uruwero, you can't undermine that there are people really who have mixed feelings about equality and equitable development in this country. And now you add in the Balaalo, who are either Bahima or Banyarwanda. There is no other tribe that does the primitive farming of Balaalo that is known other than the two. So when you get this mix, what does it mean? As I conclude my preamble, for me, the Balaalo question remains a political stock security question. Either somebody is using this Balaalo to disorganize indigenous people who culturally own the land, or is using them for political spying and political calculations in terms of election influencing. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Coming to you, Mr. Ochieno. This is a topic that has been recurring. Dr. Bireete says it's a political and security question. The Balaalo, as she has tried to explain, remain a mysterious phenomenon.
Are they within
a very modern Uganda, where we have national IDs and you can track the citizens. It remains a very mysterious phenomenon. Do you agree with Dr. Sarah that a political will could put an end to all of this?
Sometimes I get, as I said, coming from northern Uganda the other day, very exhausted coming to Kampala, and then very exhausted going to bumpy, terrible roads in Toro and Nagongera, and very angry about how NR has messed up things. Nagongera Road, they're doing some works, and then these guys crack the thing until my car bumps off, and then I get really, what's this NRA thing? So I come back here. But to come back to this stage and get flanked by entire Bere Nyanji.
Yeah, today you are under siege.
And today I'm completely under siege. Comrade Awich is a fantastic guy. That sometimes makes me think entire is not so bad. But
not at all.
But you know, I normally feel quite privileged to know and to share platforms with the two, particularly in this case, Sarah.
Yes.
Sarah's made an extremely important point that hadn't struck me, Madam Dr. Bireete. This point about the characteristics of cattle keepers.
Yeah.
And the point is this, that only the other day I was at home in Agongera, and all my breakfast meeting equivalent took 3 different meetings, including minor family disputes, one of which was land. But the other is to tell my nephews that in the limited, hardly 20 acres, Tororo is amongst the most congested. Bukedi and Kigezi are traditionally the most congested, densely populated sub-regions in the country. So in terms of land, so big issues. So I continuously was reminding my nephews that I've got 2 acres adjacent to my fence and sort of another 2 acres under in the swampy end, which I have deliberately left for over 2 years untilted. Reason is that both my cousins and a couple of my nephews have one, two cows and cows. They don't have a lot, but there is no land for them to graze. And one particular cousin used to come and bring his cattle onto my compound. And of course, there are issues with that. That look, you know, the way the other issues. They simply said, "Look, you guys have left for some space there to be able to do. So don't bring the cattle in my compound, particularly if it's associated with some other things, activity taking place in my home." So it's extremely important. Then yesterday, but one same day, I have a new boy to help tend my compound, and he insisted that he wanted me to have up to 3 cattle, and I told him that I can't have more than 2 because there's no land.
Yeah,
you know, and that indeed I was going to sort out the other to pull from where I have been keeping in another part of Tororo, you know, but you'll come home. So this is official. But I was telling him specifically because there is nowhere to graze. And the little grazing land, I leave it to my other cousins and nephews. Why? Partly because they sort of need it slightly more for those cattle, because I can sort of like manage without it. The economic and cattle point Sarah is raising.
Yeah.
So who are these people who want to have thousands of cattle, but they don't have where to graze them? Yeah. Who are these people? So it's extraordinary. But also, Sarah, as I was coming to the studios, one of the people whom I met is a neighbor of Comrade Awich in the district of the North. And her land has been occupied, and they're in court, by a Mulalo, you know, 30 acres. This is a young lawyer, actually. You're a generational group, whose land has been taken over by Balaalo, and it's land she bought from within our community anyway, because these are community things. And apparently there is a Captain Nabasa fronted when they went to court. And the Captain Nabasa does not exist anywhere. And through authorities, via the NRA official, a Nabasa, whether in the NRA links allegedly in Somalia, did not exist. So the point here is, there is what Sarah has talked about, the national security question. That's not a security question. It's a national strategic security question. Who are these people who are nameless? And as Sarah was talking about national ID, you can't identify them, but they're citizen people in this country, but they're going ahead, breaking and taunting the peace and stability, basically peace and what was it? Peace and what of the ordinary people when they come and
cohesion.
Yes, of the communities. So who are these people? So it's extremely important that we address these issues. Interestingly, I think Comrade Awich and I were having this conversation that, it may be a revisited topic, but in terms of the new situation. But why? Because when we're having conversation of the question of actually, although some of these people have gotten away, it is unresolved. And then coming back to Buganda, where some of these guys would have been evicted then, brings another question. It is this very same Buganda where disputes about displacements took place around the time NRA came to power. This NRA very specifically used Buganda and Baganda to taunt other identities that had settled in Buganda, including the communities of the Idi Amins, many other northerners, and others. My own community of Padola, and I've told this very same program, the manager of Padola who were pushed out of Buganda, out of hate, and hate churned by NRA of the other, Uno, Uyomcholi. And some of these people have never been compensated for. So where then is Mr. Museveni as the Commander-in-Chief of the Republic and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Republic of Uganda? Where is he? Unless he's got an interest, unless for a very specific reason, he's got a reason to be disinterested. Where is he? That really would be my introductory hit on this. I find it extraordinary. That's the kind of conversation that we're having. And then I want to repeat what I said in the last element of the Balaalo of the other time. Had this been any other Balaalo, including the Karamojong Balaalo, it wouldn't be this. This is real cheek, and it should be a wake-up call. Finally, credit to the Buganda caucus coming up and taking this position. I think all other caucuses in areas concerned, and so therefore the National Assembly possibly should have these debates, but I know when it goes to the National Assembly, Museveni whips them. This is a national conversation that we should be having. Because the national security question that Sarah is talking about, how is it then that we have people in our communities and we don't know who they are and we don't know where they're coming from? And there's a video doing rounds 2 days ago of this guy, very healthy looking guy, and wherever, I think the Karamojong must be feeling very jealous.
With
and
sophisticated.
Indeed. Yeah. And flanked by a pistol. The only way you can think about this is another Gaucho guy in Texas, here in Uganda. It cannot be that is an isolated case.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Ochieno. Over to you, Major. This Balaalo question came back again yesterday. I think it also helped by the fact that Acholi's, at the point, Acholi's were put on point for not being welcoming or being quote unquote xenophobic. Yeah. But I think this has now nationalized, or at least brought it to, because I think many people from different parts of the country settle everywhere. There are people who settle from all over the country. Yeah. But why, Major, do you think this Balaalo question continues? And of course, as recently evidenced by Honorable Muhammad Chivumbi at the caucus a day or two ago regarding this topic.
Thank you so much. Indeed, I was a little upset when I saw the topic for this discussion. Reason being, I thought we had discussed it. And also the other reason is that I thought the solution that the president had come up with was being implemented. I had not thought about it in the context of outside Acholi or outside northern Uganda, because I had not known this development. And there be the case, Sarah said she has made the preliminary remarks. I hope at some appropriate moment she'll give more details. But if it remains this, it would be so superficial that would not warrant a detailed discussion to make our followers follow our viewers. But nevertheless, in that preambular comment, I like to make also preambular comment on some concepts or words used by Sarah. Sarah says that, she repeatedly said that the Balaalo, whatever, uncivilized or primitive. They could be foreigners.
The method of farming.
They could be foreigners. They could be foreigners or Ugandans. Their identity need to be established. But I think apart from the civilization that took off in Egypt and Babylonian, averagely every human society now is civilized. He may or she may be practicing his or her traditions or customs, but I think all human societies are now above civilization. So there are no other civilizations now.
The method of
maybe it's a clash of civilizations.
So you don't now have not even uncivilized Karamojong, not even uncivilized Karamojong or uncivilized Acholi or uncivilized Bachiga. No, everybody is uncivilized. So I just like to put that in context. That since the Egyptian civilization or the Babylonian civilization, everybody now is civilized. We can differ in the methods of doing things, and that is it. I also like to put it aside that in the NRM way of doing things, we have not reached a point as a party to use the Balaalo for political calculation. If anything, some of us were worried that the presence in the north would work against our voting pattern, because some people have peddled the idea that they had come to take the land. And if that idea had been sustained, it would instead affect our voting. I don't think there would be such a number that would change the voting in our favor, or there's any hidden way that their presence can be used to manipulate votes. So we have no intention as a party for using the Balaalo for political calculation. And I'm talking this as a director in the party, and I'm saying it as a person privy to the sitting of the highest organ of the party, that is SEC and NEC. So I just like to make that clear. The other thing I wanted to make clear also is that at least in Acholi, I'm glad there is a developing success. Sarah puts it at 60%, and it should be 100%. And maybe in the school, in this other school of thought, is that there shouldn't be no more sale, because you can say we have evicted those who were moving around, and the sale itself is being questioned. Much as a contract is an agreement between two consenting adults, some experts have loved to say that when you contract with a poor person, it's actually not a fair contract. One side is imbalance. So there's also a further school of thought of saying, please, whatever has been sold, stop there. Don't do anymore. So, but the point is, since the president's executive order is being implemented, I'm glad there's development in the part of Acholi. The other comment I wanted to make is that about the characteristics that Sarah mentions of the cattle keepers. I come from the north, but I've lived with the Westerners quite a reasonable time, so I know their way of doing things. I was with them in NRA, I was with them in Intari school, and therefore I know quite a bit. But what I know is that it may not be that these people who, if they're Ugandan Balaalo, who are in Gulu, have no land. They actually have land. For example, I know a person who actually stood for a member of parliament in a case against John Nasasira. This guy had cows in the north, but I know he has land here. So some of them have over and more than the land they have. It's not that they're actually in the clouds. So that is why I'm addressing the characteristics that it would not really be. It could be true, Sarah is saying everybody has land, or everybody should have land. But some people have land and the number of cows have overgrown, then they get others. So that is what I wanted to say. So you find somebody with cows in Gulu, 200 or 300, but he has another 100 in Kazo, or 50 in Ngoma, or Nakasek or something.
But that is legally
acquired.
There
were talk of cows in thousands. Yeah, but so if you have more cows than your land, why don't you manage your farm? That's why I say it's primitive ways of farming.
Yes, so that is it. So some people have actually land with cows, and they are getting a second piece, another farm. Even in Ankole alone, you find somebody has a farm with 5 kraals. Meaning, like if you put it in Kampala, there's a kraal in CPS in Kampala, then another kraal in Old Kampala Police, another kraal in Makerere, maybe another kraal in Rubaga, and they're in the same farm. In fact, these kraals think that they are owned by different people when it is one owner. Others will have a farm in Kampala, another farm in Entebbe, for example. So even those who have land, I'm sure many, like the case I've cited, they are not hanging in the clouds. They have land, but some have extra cows. And maybe if Sarah is saying they should be rational enough to say, I should have what I can maintain.
That's the point.
But they are not hanging. Then the final comment. Yes?
He has something.
Oh, no, he has said it. The final comment is, I've been looking at this video of the the cattle keeper in a pistol. And I was wondering, is he a cattle keeper per se? Or there are some of our comrades who go home from service. And remember, cattle keepers, including me, when you love cows, when we go home, we put on gumboots and jump into the corral.
With your
So
pistols.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, you can put your pistol and it gets lost. Pistol is like a mobile phone. So I wouldn't be surprised unless I get the specific fact that an army officer or a security officer with his pistol who has gone home is actually tendering his cow. Because if you see what he was doing, he was actually deworming. Deworming is spraying that medicine in the mouth of the cow with a syringes. You get it and you do it. And many of us, when we're home, we like to do it.
Unless you are saying that you also wanted to add a bullet.
No, the syringes works like a bullet, just a syringe for the medicine. But the point I'm saying is, we have not conclusively found out whether this pistol man is a service army officer tendering his cow. Why are we concluding that simply because he's tendering cow, then he's an ordinary mularo with a pistol?
But Major Pollar, doesn't that allegation come from the corroboration of the fact that there's a clear trend that these the Balaalo have also been armed?
No, this is not enough. If you tender this in court, the lawyer as I am, it would be dismissed with cost.
Legally, but
just looking at a person with a pistol, you don't even know. This man with a pistol, you're saying is Mural looking after cows, saying the north. It could be a farmer,
but let's agree on
it could be a soldier, even in Itungamo.
Let's agree.
No, it was a Mnyankole speaking. Yes. So it was a Muralo. But how do you know that this man is actually with his farm in Itungamo? Far south. He has just gone back home. He has his pistol and he's treating his cows.
The lawyer is really trying to narrow his argument. That's fair enough.
So this is not conclusive. We can't do that.
The issue is of course, around in Uganda, weapons and violence is monopolized to the state, which is a good thing. The only outlaws we see are Karamojongs. So normally, when people see weapons, they either associate it with the state or the Karamojongs.
You see, if we let it be like this, suppose somebody got a serving army officer who went home and is tendering his cows and posted it there. You see, the whole intention is to plant mischief. The whole intention is to plant negativity. The whole intention is to say, look at them. They're looking after cows, Balaalo with guns, which would not be good for the country.
Yes.
Because if you distort truth and you want to put the truth for disharmony in community, it wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be a good idea. Because many of us go home. You put on gumboot. I am a cattle keeper. You go home. Yes, but if a Muralo who is an officer somewhere with a pistol, you want him to drop it on the floor for children to play with? What does it hurt to have it and it's deworming his cows? So this should be put in context. And if it is not put in context, then it is put, the photo, the innocent photo is used in bad faith. And it creates disharmony in the country for nothing.
Really, it's a big, good attempt by Comrade Awich. As I said, I've always said that Comrade Awich is a fantastic PR for these NRA guys, and he deserves a promotion. But I must say, though, that on this very particular question on guys with excess land, particularly using the Nasasere question, that's precisely my point. In fact, I would say that's actually a direct, and I repeat, a direct insult, particularly to the Achole who were brutalized by NRA while the Nasaseras were busy making money, of the states. So to the extent, as we had made the argument, that there are people with excess cattle in several farms in Western Uganda, in particular corridors, and now they're looking for land elsewhere, and they go ahead and begin to steal land in a Chole land, a post-conflict area where NRA committed genocide, in a Chole land. And people came from concentration camps and they're just trying to reorganize themselves. So go and grab their land and push, like my poor legal lawyer friend, is absolutely an insult, as Sarah insinuated earlier. that these are not desperate people, you know, at all. These are people, therefore, Comrade Awich has confirmed, with excess amount of money. So they really don't need to do. So the fact that they actually choose Buganda. So maybe these guys are a manifestation of the excess of impunity in this country, that let's go to the weak, and now we've occupied them, we've brutalized them, in many cases we've raped them, now we can then go ahead and conquer their land and take our excess cattle. Basically, that's part of the point. That's on the
immoral but not illegal.
It is excessively immoral, and in fact illegal, because genocide is, but that's a slightly different topic.
Yeah.
Bring it back to Buganda, particularly the Buganda here in Luwero. Every other time I pass Luwero, where the skyscrapers that the people of Luwero, you know, have got as a result of 38 years of NRA. Buganda was used as a battleground for Museveni. The last place for NRA to go and occupy and abuse, you know, with their land, you know, again is Buganda, because Buganda gave them everything for nothing, including sometimes free goods that, of course, they didn't have to pay back. No, the point is this, that we are saying that some of these people, if they're Balaalo who have got their land down there, it is up to the state to say in the planning thing, I know we're going to be discussing budgets, but if you got so much cattle that they're now so excess, you can't contain them in Agongera. When you're beginning to think about the next place to go, let us not go to be to a miserable part of Karamojo or Acholi, and then to go do so illegally, boasting with your pistols. You know, let it be done properly.
Let's
and in the likely and unlikely case that is not the case, you know, open up organized farms and let's begin to do dairy farming and compete with Argentina and compete with Texas for beef, because that is not the conversation. The Balaalo thing is an occupation of people whom we don't know, an occupation of people by force, an occupation of people, and the Comrade Awich made a fantastic point about it in law, that where, you know, a contract between, you know, two unequal partners is actually an abuse, and in legal terms, we've got decent laws, it would be, the conclusion would be very different. But finally, Comrade Awich is right about this thing on his politics of whether or not the North NRA might lose out in the North in electoral terms on the Balaalo thing. I want to disappoint him. Actually, this Balaalo thing has meant that NRA is going to sink. They are going to lose because they've already lost face. And then, read my lips, NRA is not going to get the kind of votes they got in the North, in Lango, in Acholi, in Karamoja, in West Nile, and read my lips, including particularly in my book, based on what they did on this kind of thing.
That's a strong statement to make, and of course,
I'm a social scientist. Comrade Awich is a lawyer.
Time will tell. I see two undertones as you come in, Major. One is, of course,
is he coming in?
Yes, I just want to respond.
One is the issue, just for our viewers. One is the issue that the unequal, you know, contracting terms on which the Northerners, for example, coming to this, being very desperate youth. I come from that side myself. I know the kind of boys and desperacy and hopeless situation. But then there's that then brings in the question around, even when I legally buy land, can it be unfair? But then there's the whole question of besides that, of the Balaalo and their tendencies. Because yes, many people have moved to actually bought land from many tribes, but then the characteristics and the nature, which is what Dr. Bireete started with. I see these as two issues that are coming up and trying to break down. Yes,
I don't want to disrupt the flow of discussion to Dr. Sarah, but I wanted to respond because it replied to my point, and I feel like a point I have developed can be misunderstood. So on the question of how I gave the example of my friend who contested in Gaza, I was trying to justify a point that these people are not hanging in clouds, some of them, because this man was among the very first to go. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's among the legal ones who have been left to remain, the lawful ones. It could be easily among the lawful ones. But I was saying,
how many acres does he?
I don't know, but I know he has a lot of cows. So it could be one of the lawful ones who have remained. But the point I wanted to justify was that some of these are not hanging in the terms of characteristics, farming characteristics. They have land, but they have more. Now, why they want this? Because they think everybody wants an expansion in business. Even Mukwano would want 5 more Mukwano industry.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Even Mukwano would want to expand. But you should do it lawfully. So like my friend, I'm saying, he would want to lawfully buy or to lawfully lease. So I just wanted that clarity in as far as that. Then the other thing, my colleague, the congressman uses not very good words. He keeps slipping into NRM rapping. Man, we have never rapped. So it doesn't. So we don't throw words for the sake.
It was confirmed by ICJ in
No,
the DRC case.
We have not rapped. So let's be careful.
The
other thing, the last thing is votes. He says that we shall lose votes because of this. But I like to say this is a vote winning for us. Why? Because this has illustrated our long-held view that in the course of the movement, in a society, we often have contradictions. What determines the success is how contradictions are resolved. So we had the issue of the contradiction of Balaalo going to Acholi. And none other than our party chairman took an executive order to resolve that. So a resolution of a contradiction to us, not only does it lead us to the next stage of development, but we earn marks for our good methods of work. So we shall get votes.
Thank you very much. Of course, Mr. Ochieno backed that with the empiricism of being a political scientist.
Yeah, read my lips.
But anyway, Dr. Bireete, you had the honors to start this topic. I'll also give you the honors to conclude, but also respond to key talking points from the two gentlemen.
Yeah, quickly, maybe on the last one, the conclusion of Afanda Awich. At least I'm glad that we are putting face to this so-called Balaalo. At least he knows one. The Chief Justice, in his remarks, said the Balaalos are proxies of ministers, generals, and big shots in government. I know some of the people we can put face. Actually, to end this quagmire on Balaalo, we need to put face as to the owners of these cattle. Some of them include the Honorable Magezi. He's one of the big Balaalo, Minister for Local Government. The CDF is another big Mlaalo in courts with the roving cows, disrupting the peace of the people everywhere. So I think part of the solution, as you say that I conclude, let me conclude with solution. We need to name and shame the people who think they can own cows without owning land and go disrupting the peace of the communities. It is primitive. If it's like the debate of the egg and the chicken. Say, I have cows, I have more, now you go and grab land. I know that in this debate, because it has gone on for a while, one of the generals on social media said that we are still in the courts of primitive accumulation of capital. So those with the means will buy land and forcefully graze on your cattle, buy cattle and forcefully graze on your land, kind of thing. So it's not the egg and the chicken what comes first. If you need to expand your farm, first acquire land through either purchase or leasing. Then you buy more cattle. If you have not done the basics, sell. So to say that people are desirous of expanding their farms and they must go abusing the rights of others,
Doctor,
this is not acceptable.
There was a question there, not a question, but a point brought up that, well, you might as well buy land and do everything legally. Probably Major's friend is in that category, but it's still unfair to the given the circumstances.
I don't know the category of, at least he has put a face to the land grabbers in northern Uganda. So for the question of northern Uganda, the leaders have explained it well. This is customary land. You inherited it from the dead, and you are holding it for the unborn. So who do you buy from? Have you consulted the dead? Have you got a signature of the unborn? It was put clearly. Who are you buying from? This is customary land. inherited from previous generations for the future. So who do you buy from to say that you have a good title? So that question must also be resolved. So meaning that if this is customary land and nobody has full authority to buy, then the means of legal acquisition should be agreed upon. And it can only be lease, but not buying. Because you don't have the dead people to sign for you, or the unborn to sign for you. And this was at the heart of the crisis in northern Uganda. Even if you've bought from a family, even if you bought for people who have now cut out, I'm glad the issue of customary titles was stopped. Because that was part of the abuse. Do you have land? Let me help you cut out a title and I take it. But which title are you cutting? This is land that belongs to a community and generations of people. So that must also be settled. When it comes to Buganda, the Balaalo are camped in Kayunga Forest Reserve. These are media reports 2 days ago by New Vision and Monitor. Forest reserves, degrading forests amidst a climate change crisis. The world is debating going green, green adaptation, renewable energy adaptation. And you go and camp in a forest to degrade it because you need to expand your farm and riches at all costs. We need development, but we must develop legally. And we must develop with the consciousness of the communities that we want to develop from. So once we miss out that, then you create a political crisis. There was an issue of one man being armed. The debate of Balaalo being armed is not new. The 7th Parliament, the 8th Parliament, debated the matter of roving armed Balaalo, right from Bunyoro to Teso wetlands, and now in Acholi and back to Buganda. So to say that it is one isolated case is really to hide your heads in the sand. There is a whole report of Parliament documenting the issue of armed Balaalo in this country. Since the 7th Parliament. This is a topic we have failed to resolve because we are unable to even identify whether these people are Ugandan or not. And if they are Ugandan, what are their areas of origin? And why are they migrating? What are their reasons of migration? Is this cattle movement documented? And I hope that the census that is yet to happen this year will also help us document cows. Who owns what number of cattle? And you citizens go and read those details. Who owns what number of cattle? Where are they based? Anybody, I know. People who own 1,000 plus cattle, I know where they come from myself. And if you cannot first purchase land, you sell the cattle. It goes at high market, 3 million plus. It is the most traded agricultural product, the most costly. That's why I wanted them taxed. And actually, if we had a cow tax, now this careless movement of cattle would stop because everybody would be interested to collect their revenues.
A future UPC government will ensure that we tax them. That's a commitment. That's a manifesto.
As you conclude.
Yeah, for me, I think these people, if they have no land, let the government confiscate all their cattle and arrest the people disrupting the peace of ordinary Ugandans.
Yes, thank you very much, our dear listeners. We are going to go into a brief segment, and when we come back, we shall continue the discussion. But this time, turning our attention, of course, to the recent ruling of the ICJ and, of course, the budget framework that was released. Stick with us here on the Citizens Chat Show.
National Water and Sewage Corporation is committed to providing cost-effective, clean, safe and reliable quality water and sewage solutions in urban centers across Uganda. National Water and Sewage Corporation reaffirms its commitment to 100% service coverage, geographical expansion, infrastructure development, water quality, pro-poor initiatives, customer care and stakeholder engagement, catchment and water source protection. Be a water hero. Pay your bills to zero balance. Report all leaks, busts, and illegal water connections to enable us serve you better. Reach us through our toll-free numbers on 0800 200 977 or 0800 300 977. You can also communicate with us through any of our online platforms or visit the National Water and Sewage Corporation office nearest to you. This message is brought to you by National Water and Sewage Corporation.
All right, right, welcome back to Citizens Chat Show here. We are breaking down several issues. In the first segment, we had a discussion around the issue of the Balaalo in the light of the recent statement made by the head of the Buganda caucus in Parliament, Honorable Muhammad, who said Baganda need to be alert. That topic was quite elaborately discussed. And now we shall move on to the ICJ ruling last month. It's the 1st of February last month, where, of course, South Africa brought a case against Israel, stating that, requesting or praying that the highest court, International Court of Justice, calls upon Israel to cease fire because of the preemptive suspicion of, the preemptive possibility of a genocide. And of course, a week later, the court did rule that there were reasonable grounds to proceed with the matter, but also called upon Israel to take more care while to avoid civilian losses, but also increase humanitarian aid in Gaza. However, it also added that they need to report every month, or at least after 1 month, on the progress regarding that. Of course, the war in Gaza remains something, maybe the most contentious issue globally. And we saw recently the concluded NAM, the joint position for a two-state solution. But starting with something maybe more, should I say, more interesting for Ugandans, we recently got serious attacks because out of the 15 judges, we had Justice 17 dismissing the case as something that was meritless. And we have here Major Pollar, who once represented Uganda also at the highest levels of global justice. As he says, 1 in a billion job. I don't know what was your reaction seeing 17, and by extension, Ugandans attacked for letting down our Palestinian colleagues.
First of all, maybe to clarify on 1 in a billion.
Yes.
The 1 in a billion thing was actually mentioned by a professor in Makerere who was my classmate in law school.
Yes.
But I think he was teaching international law, and he was telling the class the compliance system.
Yeah.
How UN monitors all these treaties, conventions. Don't government just sign and throw them there? Who is that who sees that conventions are being followed? So he was saying that there's a monitoring body which sits like a court, and that was where I was.
Yeah.
And there are 9 people. So this professor was saying, if there are 9 billion people in the world, with the Chinese about 1.5, India about 1.5, then Africa about this, then if you have about 9 billion people in the world, then if Awich is there on this body, so that means Awich is in the ratio of 1 in a billion.
Yes.
That is what it meant. And indeed, I've been there for 8 years. And now I link it with 17. 17 went through an election like I did.
Yes.
Because to be on that body,
yeah,
that treaty body that I was in, you're elected by General Assembly, the 193 states. So 17 was also voted. Now, after my election and I went to Geneva,
yes,
Uganda nominated 17 to be elected as a judge. They voted. Now, 17 went to New York and she was given my brochures, my copy.
Yes.
Because we had printed many for purposes of campaign. Because we had to circulate to voters, to embassies.
Yes, yes.
So they told 17, now that you're a candidate, please go and do something like this. So when I met her at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with a lady called Rosette Nyirikindi. Nyirikindi by then was officially the ministry at the level of ambassador and was conducting her campaign. So Rosette introduced me to 17 that, Major, which you meet Justice 17. The lawyer that is in me, I bowed down and said, much obliged, my lord. Then I was introduced in return that Justice meet Major Which. Then she said, I have his book. So in my mind, I was like, which book does 17 have? Then she pulled her bag, the lady's bag, and pulled the brochure and said, "This is it." So it turns out what she meant was actually a brochure that she was given in New York. So she conducted the campaign and was elected. I like to mention that when we are being nominated, we are nominated by our government. An election is at times sponsored by government. Government spent money in my election. So you have to travel, you have to fly, you have to host a dinner in New York, you have to host a dinner in Addis, you have to host a dinner in Jeddah, where there are international bodies to persuade them. Now, but after election, you serve in your individual capacity. So 17, they could be saying, I am an individual person, but of course, she was nominated by Uganda. Of course, she was campaigned by Uganda to have her voted. But in that case, she's in her individual capacity. Even me, after election. So she can claim that. But as a country, we get it. But first of all, I like to say I wasn't amused by her position.
Yes.
Much as she has a right to her independent opinion, I wasn't amused. So that is what she is. But I like to mention South Africa for the purposes of our viewers.
Yes.
I like our viewers to know that the philosophy of a country is shaped, among others, by its history.
Yes.
Or is shaped by the geographical situation. You will know that countries which have forests like Norway and Finland, they tend to have strong philosophical stand on environment. They will always be championing environment. Now, if you have countries like South Africa, which has gone through history of oppression, the good ones, progressive ones later on, stand up to that philosophy. So I'm happy that of 193 countries in the world, it was South Africa which stood up. In fact, I didn't care whether they lost the case, but they put up their points. That we went through apartheid, we were oppressed, we were abused, we got liberated, and with the assistance of others, including NRM, we trained them in Kaweta, here in Nakaseke. So South African, especially under ANC and the Communist Party, I repeat, African National Congress Party and the Communist Party of South Africa. Because the formula in South Africa is there are three bodies. There's ANC, COSATU, and Communist Party. The formula in South Africa is all members of the Communist Party are members of ANC. But not all members of ANC are members of the Communist Party. So you find in the womb of ANC, there are progressive forces like the Communist Party. And they insisted on South Africa taking Israel to court, which was a big thing for Africa.
Yes.
Because of their history of oppression, I have said that states tend to develop philosophies in either their geographical setting or their historical setting. And for the sake of South Africa, they have taken their philosophy to fight for fight injustice anywhere in the world because of their history. And I'm so proud of them. I was in South Africa about a week ago, and I told them, because I had a meeting with ANC about a week. I came back actually the Friday when NAM was still here.
Yes.
So I just like our viewers to share that and give glory to South Africa, and especially ANC.
Yes.
The other thing is that a precedent has been set. Some people were arguing that these were political things, it has no jurisdiction, the court has no power, and all this and all that.
Including Judge 17.
Yes. So a precedent has been set that they have. So I like that precedent set as a jurisprudence. Remember, we are operating at a time where even Security Council is toothless. Security Council, which is supposed to be the womb of global peace, is toothless. Either toothless in a sense that the inbuilt veto power kills it. For example, you want to propose something in the Security Council to be done in this situation. United States will veto it. United States will veto because United States, for some reason, is permanently voting with Israel. They can't leave them. The same thing with Israel. For example, the embargo against Cuba. General Assembly has voted 1, 2, 3, 4, 30 times. And all countries vote that lift embargo against country, except
2 countries.
USA and Israel. UK, France, Germany, everything are crying that lift embargo. The voting has taken place 30 times. And because of the toothless UN lack of policeman or police officer, they can't enforce decisions. So I'm glad this one took place and there's a precedent to that, and that sets jurisprudence. The last comment I had spared for the last is, of course, Justice Sebutinde. I think she has put us on the bad picture. Because in this court, there was even an Israeli judge. And the Israeli judge accepted the grounds which Sebutinde herself, a Ugandan, refused. The facts were so glaring. You didn't need a PhD in law to see what Sebutinde did not see.
She has one in human rights.
You didn't need this. But in her wisdom and in her independence, she chose to take that position. I like to respectively disagree with her that if she's watching this, that I'm disappointed, and I know many are disappointed. I have been in that position in Geneva for 8 years. I had my view. Many times states approached Sam Kutesa to help shape my views. When Kutesa was a minister, Kutesa told them, say, no, this man will help his election. Right now is in his individual capacity. And we have no reason to trust his capability. We believe that whatever decision he will take would be judicious. But if this is what Honorable Justice Sebutinde thinks is judicious, then I'm really disappointed. Wow. So that is my comment about the South African case.
I would like to hear from you, Mr. Ochieno, on the same. Recently, I was watching the Liberals condemning, of course, siding with Israel, but condemning apartheid and all these other former movements. Condemning apartheid and the oppression of blacks in the US. And they said, ores for the previous civil rights movements, but ores against the current one. So it was a criticism of the American political system. But what do you make of the ruling? One that Israel is officially on trial for genocide, but also I think the ICJ didn't use the word ceasefire, but in many ways talked about the humanitarian condition or plight of the Palestinian people, and of course that the proceeding with the case means there are reasonable grounds. What do you make as a comment on the ruling?
No, on this, I think we are all at par. On this, it's the case that Justice Sebutinde has shamed this country, has shamed this continent, and is actually a moral disgrace to the African personality globally. That, unfortunately, what it raises are the quality of new potential professional leaders that emerge in our communities and in our nations. And that she's able to become a judge, and I'm talking, thankfully, as a non-lawyer, I have a right to politically question how she rose through the ranks. I have not yet had time to eat through this, but trust me, as a social scientist, I will begin to investigate her rise into her various positions and her role and track record in the judicial process. Because it's so commonsensical that you actually don't need, forget about PhD, you don't need a basic, a bachelor's degree in law to run through the argument. The language, yes, neither here nor there, but in an average, broader global citizen with a reasonable conscience, considering the Arab-Israeli conflict and considering what people have been watching on television. I hardly watch these things because I don't like excess violence. It's shameful. I think part of what we've really not discussed is why she did that. And I know I've had these conversations on a number of global networks, the television networks and media, seeking opinion. One of the things we generally don't know, Sarah, is what was the motivation. There is a crude conservatism amongst Africans, which is strange. There's a crude conservatism amongst particularly religious Ugandans that are almost akin to zombie following of Zionism.
Similar to the American.
Similar to the madness around Donald Trump, that there's actually an African who thinks Donald Trump is a hero to be followed. So that is a challenge for the African personality. And so here in Uganda, there are some Ugandans who genuinely think that the Israeli thing, the Arabs who are basically being killed, whatever the case, are almost subhumans. And in many cases, some fora I've had to suggest that, you know what, I don't know whether I feel comfortable if I see a dog walking, limping. And I feel sad. I don't know whether I feel comfortable if I see a goat or a hen walking, limping. And if that is me. And to see what happens down there, and to think you're a citizen, human being without a conscience, is unfortunate. That said, and in Jesus' name, I reject her and her ruling and whatever arguments and whatever spirit. That said, I know how the Jewish lobby works. I know how the Israeli lobby works. I know how strong and powerful and how globally they control it. I know how, to an extent, the Jewish Israeli Zionist lobby nearly lost us a government in Britain by the British Labour Party, stopping Jeremy Corbyn. So I know what they can do. Possibly, they've got a link into this. But also, on the other hand, thanks to everything else, NRA brought and rehabilitated Israeli state in Uganda with Mr. Museveni and Mr. Netanyahu. So who knows? Maybe some of their guys have worked themselves through and linked and a bit of gave a little bit of an injection of some sort. That said, I was substantially delighted at the inception of this case that, as Comrade Awich says, that South Africa was able to provide the leadership. And for the first time, my comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, the man I looked up to 30 years ago in the early 90s, is back on this particular one, providing global leadership. I was absolutely delighted. I've reclaimed himself as my brethren and comrade in the liberation movement, in the African National Congress. And of course, the NRA guys have got a place as part of a contribution to the liberation struggle of South Africa. But of course, the UPC has got the founding place in the Republic of Uganda. So, but all of us are comrades as far as some of these things are concerned. No, South Africa did what it should do. And actually, one thing, Comrade Awich, if you see in terms of depth of intellectual rigor and political idealism and values, well, the African National Congress, and gladly as he's actively more recent around, if you see the ideological and political arguments around, particularly the Communist Party, not communism as presented, Communist Party of South Africa, you take them to Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, and you take them to a section of the British Labour Party. That is progressive left politics, where you critique politics, global politics on values and issues. It's actually a very exciting place and very exciting space, and maybe part of this debate could actually contribute to a new place for younger Africans and younger people of African identity to begin to review also the manner in which, the lenses with which they look at Africa and the world. It may just be a possibility that may also be able to help us to refound ourselves. No, it was exciting. When they did that, you watch, and some of the things that are not said on television, Sarah, by politicians, I know in part of the global north, particularly Britain and Northern Ireland, some of the places where I have friends, who of the media, they were taken by surprise. A number of Western global north countries felt jealous that the initiative was taken up by South Africa. But some of them actually were not sure which way their public opinion will respond. Take Israel, take Israel to court, there will be a backlash.
For genocide.
Whatever the case, actually, taking Israel at that level, there will be backlash. So actually, some of the progressive in most of the global north, would have thought about these things, including some of their rather robust leftist lawyers, Jeffrey Robertson and people like that. But is it an initiative they could do? So that it came from South Africa. One, I think is actually a score for us in terms of the global south, but two, really, really for South Africa. And for that, in terms of the outcome, I was always not very sure of how it might go, because I thought it was actually the court might actually make a political decision, and so therefore not dare Israel. But that it was so almost closely unanimous that except for
including the Israel.
It is so sweepingly relieving. But I think what is much more important about this is that there's a possibility that global polity beyond this may never be the same again. That Israel is now on the back foot, that America, meaning particularly the extreme right-wing America, for which Israel is the other part of the umbilical cord, will be having their positions reviewed. They still have the arrogance of control for that. In Britain, David Cameron, former prime minister, now the foreign secretary, was compelled the other day, to take a position on the possibility of recognizing the state of Palestine. Now I understand a certain section of the conservative element are having a mini backlash on him. But these are tests that you could not think of 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I think it's extremely important for that. So Sebatunde notwithstanding, the case as a matter of reality has really, really been one for which is welcome for this continent, welcome really for the conscience of the world, and welcome for South Africa.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ochieno. Dr. Bireete, what do you make of the ICJ ruling?
Well, I think for the first time, I agree with both my brothers. It's
You
rare.
should agree very often.
It's rare to agree with the Awich.
You should agree more often. You should agree more often.
No, but on this one, I agree with him 100%. And many Ugandans share the same view. Just a few things in addition to what has been said,
yes,
and for the benefit of the viewers. The ICJ composition of judges is usually 15. But when a case is filed, because for one to go to ICJ, it's on record for states, state versus state. So you cannot petition the court as an individual. And as a human rights defender, I keep wishing they could open for individual cases against the state. Yeah, but the way it's established is a state versus state. And that alone means that then the ICJ solves political issues. The ICJ is a legal solution to political contestations between states. So the argument of Justice Julia Sebutinde that this is a political question actually means that she's in the wrong place. She doesn't even understand maybe the mandate of the court. Because if you are adjudicating issues between states, these are political leaders. So do you think that they are bargaining about how to sell beans and the price of beans? No, they are solving political questions over there. So maybe she's misplaced. So then, but also, South Africa. South Africa has shown that actually you can upset the tables at the global level using legal means. This is a groundbreaking move. And I think then, in the failure and the weaknesses of the UN Security Council, as highlighted by Awich, then people should resort to the court. Because the UN Security Council and the resolution of the non-aligned movement to call for reforms, there cannot be any better time. I know they were holding a meeting yesterday to review the UN Security Council, to review the ICJ ruling. I didn't see anything in the media yet, but we shall get to know, because there is nothing that can be permanently hidden under the sun. But I think they should wake up. If the countries that sit permanently on the UN Security Council, who assume that they are superpowers, I want to tell those who happen to listen to this channel that you cannot be a superpower unless you are perceived so by global citizens. So this arrogance and abuse and excessive use of force in the name of being a superpower, so long as the citizens stop perceiving you as a superpower, you will lose that power, you will lose that respect, and will remain like a warmonger. Yes, you have power, you have tools to wage war, but so long as you don't channel this power and the tools to guard peace, which is the mandate of the UN Security Council, to keep global peace and stability, then you lose that power. You will only be like heavy lifting in terms of trying to assert yourself. But the global citizens can choose to ignore you, and you will not have that power. You will lose that legitimacy. So long as your power is not respected. So that when they use their power, they should be mindful of the views and perceptions of the people. I'm glad that Norway has welcomed the ICJ ruling and they are calling for its enforcement. I wish to see more of the countries that were formerly sympathetic to the Israel aggression, shifting gear and calling for enforcement of the ICJ decision. From the time the ruling was passed, I know that a lot hasn't changed, but there has been movement of aid, although Israel is still committing crimes, including exhuming the dead. Very unfortunate, very unfortunate events that Israel is committing. I like the point that Joe brought up on what could have driven Julia Septinde to rule the way she did. I only suspect one or two things. And like I said, it's just my view, my opinion. One of my suspected grounds could have been, because I know that there's a difference between the normal polity in Uganda, but also high-level dealings that might not be founded or known, for example, the party organs or the state organs. So maybe a strange call could have come through at midnight and say, please, my daughter, help Israel. That's one of the areas I suspect. And then because you are ruling without your conscience, but you are ruling to help, then you run, what the Banyankore say, you run past your home. So you even rule excessively, even on grounds that that Judge Balak of Israel even allowed you reject because you are not doing things with your conscience. For me, really, that's what I suspect. Because there is no other, like it does not make sense to even rule against aid, to rule against, saying Israel must, reprimand public officials who use genocidal language and incite genocide in the public. Why would any person rule against those two grounds? So it does not make sense at all. Going forward, I think, and I hope, and I know Justice Julia Septinde was voted to the panel where she sits by majority non-aligned movement members, because they are the majority in the UN General Assembly. I wish she could have, I don't know how to call it,
review her position and
review her consciousness, assuming that was her consciousness.
Is she in her second term or first?
Yeah, she's in her final term, but even then, why do you, screw it up for Ugandans at that highest level? And immediately after Uganda has assumed, the chairmanship of NAM, a constituency that voted for her, and holding a summit that was clear. And even in their Kampala declaration, they were looking forward to the decision that she ruled. That she ruled.
Sarah, sorry to interrupt you. Actually, this is such a major own goal. Now, on a more serious note, in fact, it's almost now annoying as citizens, away from the points we're making formally as a panel. It's a major own goal for Uganda. Which is basically the point. I want to bring it much later, but maybe let's just bring it at this stage.
Please go ahead.
To consider that we had just
assumed,
been busy, not even assuming the position, but we've actually been glittering around the world. The PR plus that we're having for hosting of these global organizations,
brought down.
It gets brought down in such a major way. And by the way, the Sebatunde ruling in a position is so major morally that it kills. By the actually, I saw on Twitter a very major personality actually saying that she was preparing to come to Uganda on Twitter. She was preparing and considering to come to Uganda
to do what?
As a to visit as a tourist, and she was going to do so. And she had so many likes and so many comments. I didn't have much time about it. A very major personality with huge amount of global following are saying that. So really, actually, as a nation, the image has been massively dented. But anyway,
Dr.
please.
Sarah, now that you open window for
Yes.
supplement,
Yes.
I have gone through this election twice, and I know what matters. And I'm very sure that 17 days judgment will have an impact on the next judicial
Ugandan,
officer elect
yes,
candidature.
from Uganda.
Any judge from Uganda to be nominated in UN for an election.
She has just ruined
We have
it
had
for
Justice
everyone.
Bossa.
Yeah.
Bossa has been there.
Yes.
17 has been there. Nsereko has been there. We have had 3 judges. Nsereko was for the...
Elizabeth was in which court?
Which one?
The late Elizabeth.
Elizabeth was in also one. But Nsereko was for the UN court for Yugoslavia. Bossa is in this other one, the ICC, but there's another bench. It's for ICC. Then this one is ICJ. But for any further candidate, any judge to be nominated, that judge has to prepare an appeal task for an election.
She has just
because many states have been touched and they are not happy. So they look at the Ugandan judge.
Yeah, not again. She has just ruined it for everyone. Ruined
unnecessarily.
She powered the first cold water on the on Museveni's chairmanship for now. She has ruined it for Uganda. And maybe Uganda can still reclaim their glory under NAM by pushing assertively
A specific tone, yes.
for the implementation of the ICJ decision and for the two-state solution for Palestine and Israel.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Bireete. And of course, I'm glad to deliberate the first agreement between the three,
the panelists.
between the panelists.
But just so these things are possible.
But just to say that, again, our good OB of Ntare School, Adonia, Ambassador Adonia issued a statement totally disassociating ourselves.
And the ministry.
And Sebutinde is ruling on our own. If you think all boys are not good. Ambassador Adonia issued a statement. So Sebutinde thing has nothing to do with Uganda's position. Although the effect, we shall share it.
That's true. My dear guests, I would like us to comment on the budget framework as we close the discussion for today. Of course, our dear guests will have followed that recently the framework for the 2024-2025 budget is out. Time really flies. Sometimes it's 2024-2025 budget is out. Of course, the framework totaling to 72.7 trillion, which if implemented as is, will of course be 15 trillion shillings less than the previous years, which cuts into the trend of increasing the budget. I don't know if that is a positive or a negative. We'll get to know from my dear guests. But of course, there were some interesting allocations, including 18 trillion for debt repayment, 9.5 trillion for human capital development, 4.4 trillion for infrastructure and service delivery, 7 trillion for security, among other areas. Other major comments included the decry about underfunding mineral development, innovation, manufacturing and tourism development, which all boast less than 0.5% of the budget. So, of course, this always raises the similar, the continuous questions. As they say, there are some problems that keep coming, and of course, it's up to us to keep them in the light. Dr. Bireete, in the light of the recent framework, do you have any particular comments regarding the allocations and the priorities?
Maybe overall is to say that the 52.7 trillion budget just falls short of the previous year's budget by 14 billion. Then the goal of the 2024-2025 budget framework is accelerating economic growth. But what do we get out of? I want to talk of fiscal discipline and the budgetary function involving the economy, which we seem to miss. For me, in the view of supplementary budgets, which I call a pandemic, under NRM, we have a pandemic of supplementary budgets, makes the budget process or renders it useless. We spend a whole year budgeting because the new budget framework starts at the end. No, immediately we read the new budget. The next budget framework process begins. We spend a whole year budgeting, getting user departments to initiate budget through their needs. The approval process through committees of parliament. We approve a budget framework paper, go back and now look at the real figures on the budget, and then by June, you have another budget ready for reading. But immediately in the first quarter, then government comes up with supplementary budget. The last supplementary budget had an item for funding for State House, which was double, which was more than the annual budget for State House. Budget requested for funds, but last year Parliament added more funds to State House. But the supplementary budget was more than a total of the budget allocation. So do we really respect the budget process? Do we put our minds to a budget process as a key tool for fiscal discipline in the country, as a key tool for estimating expenditures with revenues? Because even in this budget, the revenue that is envisaged to be collected in the next budget still falls short, because it's about 29 trillion, 29.5 trillion. And you have a budget of 52.7 trillion, meaning that we are just slightly half of the budget. So you are going to borrow half of the estimated revenues. And out of that, you have 59% of the budget going into salaries, debt repayment, and servicing. So you remain with 31% for development. And so do we really have budget? 17 trillion alone is going into immediate debt repayment. Then the other, there's debt servicing, interest on loans, and we are already adjusting payment schedules, renegotiating payment schedules. So when you plan your budget and the 60% is just expenditure and debt, as a country, are we really making progress? 40%, you are planning for an economy. It's important to note that in these last quarters of the financial year, the whole of 2023, revenue missed, URA missed their target for revenue collections. There were shortfalls in every quarter, meaning that our economy is shrinking. How does government expand the economy and expand the tax base? Through investment. But we are now making a budget just for money to spend with no investment into the people and with the aim of growing the tax base. For me, this is really unfortunate, and it keeps us in that cycle of debt as a country.
Yes, thank you very much. Mdeia, I would like to bring you in on that issue regarding the her comment that the fact that there's that fiscal indiscipline regarding supplementary budgets then renders the whole budgeting process at most just partially useful. What do you take of that?
Useless.
Okay.
You want to say something positive?
No.
Okay.
half glass.
Yes, thank you so much. First, I'd like to say this topic, for all intent and purposes, is quite technical.
Yes.
And how I wish in future would be joined by somebody from the Ministry of Finance. Because there's so much that I know I could unearth that we don't have.
Yes.
But nevertheless, We are faced with glaring issues in the budget, like paying loan. We just like to say that loan is part of life, part of us. It's part of America. It's part of Japan. All of them have loans. It's difficult. Even these ordinary business people in town, it's difficult to run a business without borrowed money. So a state is like that. Of course, there are countries like Liechtenstein, which operate on surplus budget. I've not checked lately what Switzerland has, but I wouldn't be surprised if Switzerland also borrows. I know German borrows a lot. German is in debt. So it's something that lives with us. However, we have to be more disciplined, especially where there's borrowing. Part of the ingredients of in discipline that the other time I was giving scorecards and I gave it below pass mark is of course the control of resources, the corruption there too. So you have paid all the debts, the 18 trillion or 17 trillion, you have even remained with this, and this is a challenge that you might even lose it. Now here comes supplementary budget, which Dr. Sarah raised the red flag on. I think we are being governed in parliament by a law. That is the law, or what is called, is it called?
Public Finance
and Management Act. Whatever supplementary that we have, it must be within the law. Below, the law puts a seal. And if the seal is not there, I can assure you would have seen the jumping up and down here. From the finance experts in a position like Mafabi, there are many. Parliament is full of experts in finance. And they would have raised. So, supplementary as it is, supplementary is defined under the law, what it is meant for, what it is supposed to do, and the cap, the ceiling. So I would imagine that the many supplementaries that still comes within the law and within the ceiling. What surprises me though is that even by grammatical sense, the definition of supplementary should be something which was not foreseeable. What is the other ingredient?
Unseen and unforeseeable.
Unseen and
unseen, unavoidable,
unavoidable
and unforeseeable.
But sometimes we do the ordinary routine,
including salaries.
That you see,
and buying cars.
Is this also unseen? Is this unforeseeable? This one we should have seen it. So I think the Minister of Finance should try not only to stick to the ceiling in terms of figures, but should stick to the ceiling in terms of the principles. If the principle is we shall only come for supplementary for things that occurred during the financial year, emergency, like drought, like floods, like famine which came from nowhere, or some accidental bombing that occurred, such things. And it is defined under the Act. So the Minister of Finance should not only act within the figure limit that the law provides for this ceiling, but they should also act within the limits of the principle. But otherwise, supplementary is provided under the law and it is there to stay. Then the other aspect is, amidst this borrowing, this paying debts, this little reservation for development and for day-to-day running, we shall have to look at it, the effect in the overall economy. World Bank, Bank of Uganda, for the past few years, have not come with bad figures in terms of the development of Uganda, the development trend. Even when we had quarrels with World Bank, the figures of World Bank was still saying Uganda is safe economically.
Have those quarrels ended?
I don't know whether it has ended, but for me, I'm even happy that they can still make good judgment when we are quarreling. Because if they had made this judgment when we are happy with them, you'd say because they are friends. But even amidst cutting aid, cutting whatever, World Bank figures were still reading well. And then Bank of Uganda figures were still reading well. Of course, we still have our challenges with poverty and all that, but still overall it is reading well. And I keep telling the congressman that at the end of it all, this mixed will live longer, life expectancy, and we live happiest in East Africa. Because all this must crystallize into the well-being of a citizen. So the challenge is there, the mixed is there, and it will continue to happen, but we should be guided that we're acting within the Public Finance and Management Act, and the effect must not only be in figures, but in the livelihood of a Uganda. And so far, World Bank, IMF,
they agree.
And Bank of Uganda agree.
I'll let Mr. Ochieno respond to that, but also comment on the budget framework in general.
I am very worried, really, really worried. Like we're discussing, and there are really questions. If you depend on the IMF and World Bank, to determine your happiness, then you must really, really know that you're in trouble.
They claim to be expert.
Part of the
they claim to be expert.
Then, those of us who are leftists, and I thought you were, with Joe Slovo, if he came out of the grave, it would be very sad that you're using that, because the neoliberal agenda of IMF and World Bank is part of the problem. But no, you have to make a point though. No, I think that the budgetary provision as presented has just confirmed that, and indeed both of my colleagues have insinuated, and of course they've actually agreed in some areas. So we don't disagree completely, but they agree in some areas, except Comrade Awich has got to agree slightly much more diplomatically in some areas. That no. This regime, when it comes to fiscal discipline, it's absent. And when it comes to planning, is absent. Because after 38 years, we would all be living on skyscrapers. I want to tell you that looking through basically the spends, Sarah has discussed in terms of the amount of monies that come in, and to the extent that we are looking at, extreme, the monies that are going to come into our envelopes minus basically projected revenues from other places, including borrowings, neither here nor there. But if you look at really, really where our big monies are going to go, 18 trillion, I will go to debt repayment, 18.6.8. Human capital development, now, which I told you that is now this new, beautiful looking way of budgeting, but really, really about to cover up, on the key sectors that you talk about, education, health, and agriculture, is merely 9.5 trillion. Yeah? Granted, thanks to UPC's push for the agenda for infrastructure, they talk about integrated transport and infrastructure services, 4.4 trillion. Governance and security. Governance and security. I don't even know
why the two were combined.
Of course,
because security disrupts governance.
No, but really to make it acceptably come for you guys to absorb, for the ordinary citizens to absorb, 7.6 trillion. Private sector development, 1.9. Agro-industrialization, 1.8. Sustainable energy, 1.3. Regional development, 1.0. Legislation and oversight, meaning parliamentary commission and things like that, just under a billion, 945 billion. Point is, human capital development, 9.5. Yeah. Governance and security, 7.6. Human capital development, you're talking about health,
education,
public health, and public education, two key sectors. There is no way in which you would give them monies equivalent to Mr. Museveni's 400 truck cars plus ISU and ESU officers.
But to be fair, don't you think we have security concerns in living in the fragile region?
Which country does not have insecurity? So in what way?
No,
so security,
security
concern in what way?
No, I mean in terms of one, that we live in a fragile region. So we have that operations going on in the neighboring countries, but also within to maintain the infrastructure and improve it. But also that security builds the human capital as well. It's the foundation.
What aspect of security? We've had an army for 38 years. We've never had the army overthrow itself. Mr. Museveni is very lucky. 38 years. Mr. Museveni assured the citizens of this country 10 years ago that is fully complete the professionalization, meaning training them and everything else and equipping them. What aspect of that, should make the maintenance of the security services, it be equivalent to the entire health budget and the entire education budget and the entire agricultural budget combined? What aspect of that? It is just completely unexplainable. Number two, I came from northern Uganda the other day, and I've been to the north 3 times in the recent times. I've been to the west farther the other day, the west corridor slightly away from Ankole, the other end of it. You go to actually rural part of this country, and I came from the east the other day. And every other time, as you know, Olaa, I like traveling with your group, some of your colleagues, including some of your classmates. I have made journeys with them deliberately to work as my PAs, but to make them learn. And then I say, just look at that village as we pass by, and you look at the lives, and you look at the conditions of people, particularly young people going to schools. Those are the realities of Uganda. So what I saw in the north, I did not see anything reflective of this. What I saw in the east, I have actually argued, I did not see anything, relating to this. And I wonder, debt repayment, point Comrade Awich earlier raised, and we've discussed this before, that no, it is okay to have debts. In other words, it's okay to borrow, but to borrow for what? When I travel from here to Tororo, to Nagongera, and into my home, there is nothing specific I see, Sarah. Starting from Kibimba rice scheme, there is nothing major I see as a major infrastructure or an innovation. One single thing that I see which is new under NRA. Not a road, I said from Kibimba. When I see from Kibimba side, meaning from the other side, there's nothing I see into Tororo, and there's nothing I see into Nagongera. And I look through the sides of the schools, I look through the sides of industries, and then I go down into the ordinary livelihoods of people. I see in terms of schools. I see performance in terms of education. It's the other side. Thanks to Nagongera girls, my beautiful girls boarding school, primary school, but thanks to the fantastic job being done by the nuns. The rest as zero. So really, we must look at these things on the basics of the realities of the ordinary citizens in terms of their livelihoods, their abilities to survive and to live. And let me tell you something, Sarah. People continue to die. People continue to sell land because somebody had a motorbike accident. People continue to die because they can't sort out the question of malaria. The other day, one of my workers had to get more than half of his pay, in advance to sort out malaria treatment for his 1.5-year-old child. That is the broader context, monthly pay. I was in hospital, a major Kampala hospital the other day, and I saw a bill of 11 million Uganda shillings in a Kampala hospital for a patient who's been moved to that hospital and over a period of hardly 5 days. How many average Ugandans can afford that? Health injections, we saw the other day. Oh, actually, let me make this quickly. Sarah, I don't know whether you missed the Sarah and Comrade Awich, sorry, because I'm fond of you before this man. He keeps saying that, well, Mir is overthrowing entire. The Namibian president, a comrade in the SWAPO, was diagnosed with a particular rare type of cancer. And on the basis of his commitment to openness, open government, the president has issued a statement. I'm not boring you guys. One. Number two, after that, become an outpour.
Did he go for hospital?
Yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, that's right. So then, in the course of that, he started going through the process of treatment. But because it's a global thing, he was invited for a particular aspect of operation in a United States hospital. He came out and issued a statement and said that in line with his commitment to openness, he told the country and told the world
Because it's a rare condition.
Partly the fact that it's sick, because some of our guys, they go to particular conditions, then they claim it's COVID when they don't want to go and face the world on particular issues.
Awich's government flew a chopper, a presidential chopper to Germany for somebody to give birth. Pregnancy is not a disease.
I have never recovered from that. I don't want to pretend. That pregnancy that took our chopper to Germany, I have never recovered from it, considering that I go to hospitals and health facilities and I see people die in this country, merely, and particularly women and young people. But anyway, so what happened? The Namibian president said 95% of the procedures are going to be conducted in Namibia. 5% specialists, on request of friendly specialists, are going to take him to America. The flight to America was not going to be
a chopper
or the responsibility of the Namibian taxpayers.
Yes.
The treatment and time in America, including everything else, was being borne privately by friends and well-wishers. And number two, he has committed himself that that specific element of technology which is absent in Namibia will be brought back.
There is a true revolution going on in Namibia.
Into Namibia.
Just to add on this, there is a true revolution going on in Namibia.
You know?
Forget this whatever fundamental change that never was. So Namibia issued a press statement before the ICJ ruling on Palestine. And they were very clear where they stood. I wish states that believe Israel is committing, or there is a probable case of committing genocide, could join South Africa in the case. Because now that the court has jurisdiction, people can apply to join either party. I wish we could see leaders walking the talk in that case. But I'm glad about Namibia.
Indeed. And we are seated with a director of external services affairs in NRM, and he quite rightly sits in a very powerful organ of SEC, as they call them. I hope you're able to persuade your once upon a time Ntari, Obi, and to at least make Uganda proud, particularly because it holds a position of the non-aligned movement. So that is how states work. So it means that in the next possibly 12 months, Namibia will be better off than worse in some of the situations. That's what you do. So when we're looking at budget allocations and reviews, you're talking about supplementaries, you're talking about planning, you're talking about development. You look at what the SWAPO administration is doing, and you look at the more recent presidents doing is actually not Jean Massam, but because these guys have transitions and move on and things happen. No, that's how things are supposed to be. But this other one here of Mr. Museveni and the whole thing, it's just another day at work. But I wish we could learn from that.
Thank you very much. I would like to bring you in, Dr. Bireete. Of course, Mr. Ochieno paints a dire picture, but once again, from other metrics, we of course all know not all is well, but from other metrics like the World Bank, we see growth, we see an increase in life expectancy, unprecedented. One of the highest, if not the highest, in the last post-independence Uganda life expectancy. But also, as Major Awich has pointed, in terms of the happiness indexes, Uganda also outscores many of its East African colleagues. What's your take on
I am beginning to lose faith in the government figures. And for the record, I want viewers to know that I was a serious mathematician who would win math contests and math quizzes. And even during the law course, anything that involved when the others were crying of taxation and other things, I would just wake up and write my exams. So I'm a serious mathematician in my other world. Why am I losing faith in government figures? Just as Parliament was debating this report, it was brought, MPs brought out a matter of inconsistency that should worry every Ugandan. The Auditor General's report puts our debt at 97.4 trillion. And it's important to note that Auditor General completed his audit in December. So this figure does not include money borrowed. The Auditor General's report is for
last year.
Yeah, for the previous year. It's not for this year, which ended the last month or month now that we are in February. It's not for 2023, it's for 2022. That financial year, which ended in in June 2023. So this report does not include money borrowed from July 2023 to date. Parliament in December approved the 7 trillion borrowing in 3 days. So this debt does not include that money. It puts our debt at 97.4 trillion. Bank of Uganda, on the other hand, puts our updated public debt, including July 2023 until their last report that was issued in November, at 88.8 trillion. It is lower than Auditor General's report ending June 2023. Ministry of Finance puts our public debt today at 87.3. Like, what's going on?
But are they from the same timelines?
What does this show?
Yeah.
It shows deliberate falsification of data by government agencies to politically look good. So even when the paper money or the figures talk of economic growth, can we evaluate this economic growth? Does it exist? Is there economic growth in citizens' wallets? Can citizens afford food? Can citizens afford school fees? We are returning kids to school. Can citizens afford health care? Is there money in citizens' pockets? Do we have an improvement in the purchasing power of citizens? Do we have growth in revenue generation? How come Ministry of Finance is reporting economic growth, but URA is registering shortfalls of 343 billion every quarter? Why? Economic growth on one side of those talking political figures. On the correction to the national resource envelope, there is shortfall at every quarter. So where is this economic growth? On the other hand, citizens are struggling. Purchasing power parity is going down. These are lies. There is no economic growth. Do you see economic growth in your pocket?
What? No.
Okay, let me ask the other panelists.
Yes, I'm a moderator.
Yes,
So I would like to give.
You see, I had earlier on started.
Okay, sorry for putting you on the spot.
I had started with a kind of a disclaimer that we needed an expert from the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah, we are sharing as
because
citizens.
We are mentioning figures here that if the rightful person came, would put it to perspective. So I really can't. I don't think I have the mandate in my rudimentary mathematics from Montare to start doubting the figures that has been authored officially. Neither does Sarah with her good mathematics from Werenyanye, which is the same as Ntare.
These are official reports.
So we need somebody to put it in its perspective. And I knew this is where the debate would go. And that's why, my preliminary remarks was, we needed to have got an official person here. Okay?
To defend
now,
the
about growth in your pocket. Maybe there are other measures of growth, but
growth in
this is average situation. Even when we talk of life expectancy, that is not to say some people are dying at 2 years, 3 years, others 4 years, others 70. When we talk of life expectancy going to 64, we are talking of average. So when we are talking of growth, we are not talking of it in one man's pocket. We are talking the average. So you can't put
how come
one person
URA
and say
is
growth in your
registering the
pocket.
shortfalls?
That is not how it is measured.
URA, Mr. Moderator,
Yes, please.
URA is a collection of all our pockets. Why is it registering shortfalls if there is growth?
Still, the inability of URA to collect is why I wanted an expert explanation. They have it because a collection in one period, that a shortfall does not signify the all. Some of these come in season time, harvest time, activity times, whatever. There's inflow time and all this. So if you get, for example, one of the business I do is investment funds. Investment funds mean you give your money to investors, they do business with it, and they pay you. But you even know in investment fund there are seasons, because that season, for example, around Christmas, you do not, because you are paid monthly, you don't expect flat time, because there are times when you have public holidays, when you have, like Christmas, it comes low. So this one, we need the expert. That's what I called it. So you can find a shortfall, it's explainable, but we are here, we are handicapped to explain it.
No, this is about laws. This is about laws of averages, surely. And for the record, and as a very emphatic disclaimer, I got 98% at my PLE that took me to win. So in other words, I just accidentally, I just did this one question wrong. So no. Anyway.
So now, if that is the average, is it right, therefore, for Sarah to ask the host growth in his pocket when the thing is taken on average? Is it right to ask a particular person, a particular pocket?
I was going to answer, but I had to maintain discipline as a moderator.
So you don't ask in a particular pocket. Like life expectancy, when they say we're living at 64, is not to say everybody's living at 64.
As a matter of interest, in opinion polls, that's exactly what they do. And sometimes you may not like the results, but that's what they do. Just like, so therefore, in terms of sampling, no, there's some polls.
In our case, the results are out. URA has registered shortfalls every
in
quarter.
A particular time.
The economy is shrinking every quarter.
And the fact that, as a matter of interest, anyway, we concluded. The fact that I say that you come from Kipimba, Agra War is home, to Toruru town, to Nagongera, to my house, and you don't see anything. You know, that should not need an expert presence, surely.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Bireete, Mr. Ochieno, and Major Awich. Thank you very much, our dear viewers, as well, for sticking with us. We have run through a series of discussions, not the least of the Balaalo question, which resurrected again in the last few days, but also the ruling of the ICJ and the quandary that we face as Ugandans dealing with, of course, Justice 17 days particular ruling, but also finally discussing the fiscal or the budget framework that came out this week. I know for sure that this is I could say, a permanent issue of discussion, and we'll do very well next time to have an expert to break it down. We already have two mathematicians. We'll add an economist.
Even me, I'm a mathematician.
So we are experts.
Thank you very much for sticking with us. Please share as far as you can. Let's keep together, watching as we continue, of course, to build these discussions that collectively try to build Uganda, our nation. Thank you very much. I remain Okot, your host for today.